Book of Heaven, Volume 19, Part 10. June 6, 1926. Jesus wants our link with everything he has done. Just as God established the epoch and the time of redemption, so it is for the kingdom of his will. The redemption is means to help man. The divine will is origin and end of man. I was doing my acts in the supreme will, according to my usual way, and I tried to trace everything that my Jesus, my celestial Mama, the creation, and all creatures did. Now, while I was doing this, my sweet Jesus helped me by making present to me all of his acts that I omitted to trace, not having the capacity to do it. And Jesus, all goodness, would make his act present to me, telling me, "My daughter, in my will, all of my acts are all present, as though lined up together. Look, here are all the acts of my childhood. There are all my tears, my wailings. There is also when, as a little child, I picked flowers while walking through the fields. Come to place your I love you on the flowers I pick, and on my hands that stretch out to pick them. It was you that I looked at in those flowers. It was you that I picked as tiny little flower of my will. Don't you want then to keep me company with your love in all my acts as a child, amusing yourself with me in these innocent acts? Keep looking. There is when, a little child, tired from crying for souls, I would have some very short sleep. But before closing my eyes, I wanted you, so that you might favor my sleep. First, I wanted to see you kiss my tears by impressing your I love you in each tear, and to have me close my eyes to sleep with the lullaby of your I love you. But do not leave me alone while I sleep. Wait until I wake up, so that just as you closed my sleep, you may open my vigil in your I love you. My daughter, the one for whom it was established that she would live in my will, was inseparable from me, and even though at that time you were not there, my will made you present and gave me your company, your acts, your I love you. And do you know what an I love you in my will means? That I love you encloses an eternal happiness, a divine love, and for my tender age, that was enough to make me happy and to form a sea of joy around me, enough to make me put aside all the bitternesses that the other creatures gave me. If you do not follow me in all my acts, there shall be a void of your acts in my will, and I shall remain isolated, without your company. But I want your link with everything I have done, because, since one is the will that unites us, as a consequence, one must be the act. But keep following me. Look at me here. When at my tender age of 2 or 3 years, I would withdraw from my mamma, and kneeling, with my arms stretched in the shape of the cross, I prayed to my celestial Father that he would have pity on mankind, and in my open little arms I embraced all generations. My position was excruciating. So little, on my knees, with my arms stretched out, crying, praying. My mamma could not have endured seeing me. Her maternal love that loved me so much would have made her succumb. Therefore, come, you who do not have the love of my mamma. Come to sustain my little arms, to dry my tears. Place an I love you of your own upon that ground against which my little knees were leaning, so that it may not be so hard for me. And then throw yourself into my little arms, that I may offer you to my celestial Father as daughter of my will. Even from that time I called you, and when I saw myself alone, abandoned by all, I would say to myself, if everyone leaves me, the newborn of my will shall never leave me alone. Isolation is too hard for me. Therefore my acts await yours and your company. But who can say all that my sweet Jesus made present to me of all the acts of his life? If I wanted to tell them all, I would be too long. I should fill entire volumes. Therefore I stop here. Then after this I was saying to my lovable Jesus, my love, if you so much love that your most holy will be known and reign with its full dominion in the midst of creatures, why did you not form, together with redemption, the fulfillment of your most holy will when you came upon earth, united with your celestial mamma, who, just as she obtained the longed-for Redeemer, could also obtain the longed-for Fiat? Your visible presence would have helped and facilitated the kingdom of the supreme will upon earth in an admirable way. But doing it through this poor, wretched, and incapable creature, it seems to me as if it would not have all the glory and the total triumph. And my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, my daughter, everything was established, the epoch and the time, both that of redemption and that for making my will known upon earth, so that it might reign. It was established that my redemption was to serve as means of help. Redemption had not been the origin of man, but it arose as means, after man moved away from his origin. On the other hand, my will was the origin of man, and the end, in which he must enclose himself. All things have their origin from my will, and everything must return into it. And if not everyone shall do it in time, no one shall be able to escape it in eternity. Therefore, also for this reason, the primacy is always of my will. Now, in order to form redemption, I needed a virgin mother, conceived without the shadow of original sin, because having to take on human flesh, it was decorous for me, eternal Word, not to take an infected blood to form my most holy humanity. Now, in order to make my will known, so that it might reign, I do not need to have a second mother according to the natural order, but rather I need a second mother according to the order of grace. In fact, in order for my will to reign, I have no need of another humanity, but to give such knowledge of it that, drawn by its prodigies, by its beauty and sanctity, and by the immense good that comes to them, creatures may submit with all love to its dominion. Therefore, in choosing you for the mission of my will, I took you from the common stock according to the natural order. But for the decorum of my will, I had to raise you so high, according to the order of grace, that not one infected shadow might remain in your soul, because of which my will might feel reluctant to reign in you. Just as the pure blood of the Immaculate Virgin was needed to form my humanity, to be able to redeem man, so was the purity, the candidness, the sanctity, the beauty of your soul needed to form in you the life of my will. And just as by forming my humanity in the womb of my mamma, this humanity gave itself to all, it is understood to those who want it as means of salvation, of light, of sanctity. In the same way, this life of my will, which has been formed in you, shall give itself to all, to make itself known, and to acquire its dominion. Had I wanted to free you of original sin, as I did with my celestial mamma, so that my will might take life in you, no one would have given a thought to letting my will reign within himself. They would have said, one needs to be a second mother of Jesus, and to have her privileges, so that the life of the Supreme Will might reign in us. On the other hand, by knowing that you are from their stock, conceived just like them, if they want it, helped by their own good will, they too shall be able to know the Supreme Will, what they must do to let it reign within them, the good that comes to them, the terrestrial and celestial happiness prepared in a distinct way for those who shall let my will reign. My redemption was to serve to plant the tree of my will, that, watered with my blood, cultivated and hoed with my sweats and unheard of pains, fertilized with the sacraments, first would make the tree develop, then would make the flowers bloom, and finally would make the celestial fruits of my will mature. And in order to make these precious fruits mature, the course of my 33 years was not enough, nor were the creatures prepared and disposed to receive a food so delicate, all of heaven, that I was giving. Therefore, I contented myself with planting the tree, leaving all possible means to make it grow, beautiful and gigantic, and at the appropriate time, as the fruits are about to mature, and so that they may be picked, I chose you, in a way all special, to make known to you the good it contains, and how I want to raise the creature back to her origin. Banishing her will, the cause for which she descended from her happy state, she shall eat of these precious fruits, that shall give her such taste as to remove from her all the infection of passions and of her own will, and give back the dominion to my will. Embracing everything as though in one single embrace, my will shall unite everything together. Creation, redemption, and the fulfillment of the purpose for which all things were created. That is, that my will be known, loved, and done on earth as it is in heaven. And I, Jesus, my love, the more you tell me, the more I feel the weight of my littleness, and I fear that I might be an obstacle to the kingdom of your will on earth. Oh, if you and my mamma had done this directly, while being on earth, your will would have had its full effect. And Jesus, interrupting my speaking, added, "My daughter, our task was perfectly accomplished. Now, you be attentive on accomplishing your own. This is your task. More so since the Sovereign Queen and I are untouchable by pains. We are in the state of impassivity and of complete glory, and therefore pains can no longer have anything to do with us. You, on the contrary, have the pains as help to impetrate the supreme fiat, new knowledges, new graces. And even though I am in heaven, I shall be hidden in you to form the kingdom for my will. My power is always the same. While being in heaven, I can do what I would have done while being visible on earth. When I want it, and the creature lends herself, giving all of herself prey to my will, I invest her and make her do what I myself should do. Therefore be attentive and mind your own task. June 15th, 1926. How the nothing is frightened and trembles under the all. How the Virgin loves her celestial children and performs in heaven her office of mother. Just as knowledge gave life to the fruits of redemption, so it shall give life to the fruits of the divine will. I was feeling all full of defects, especially because of the great repugnance I feel when it comes to writing of the intimate things between myself and our Lord. The weight I feel is so great that I don't know what I would do in order not to do it. And since the obedience of the one who is above me imposes itself, though I would like to oppose myself and tell my reasons for not doing it, I always end up surrendering. So, having gone through a similar contrast, I felt full of defects and totally bad. Therefore, as blessed Jesus came, I told him, "Jesus, my life, have pity on me. Look at how full of defects I am, and how much badness there is in me." And he, all goodness and tenderness, told me, "My daughter, do not fear. I am here, watching over you and keeping your soul in custody, so that not even the slightest sin may enter into your soul. And where you or others see defects and badnesses, I find none. Rather, I see that your nothing feels the weight of the all. In fact, the more I elevate you intimately to me, and I make known to you what the all wants to do with your nothing, the more you feel your nothingness, and almost frightened and crushed under the all, you would want escape from manifesting, and even more from writing on paper that which the All wants to make of this nothing of yours. More so since, as much reluctance as you feel, I always win and make you do what I want. This happened also to my celestial mamma, when she was told, "I hail you, Mary, full of grace. You shall conceive the Son of God." On hearing this, she was frightened. She trembled and said, "How can this happen?" But she ended up saying, "Fiat mihi secundum verbum tuum." She felt all the weight of the All over her nothing, and naturally, she was frightened. So when I manifest to you what I want to do with you, and your nothing is frightened, I see the fright of the sovereign queen being repeated, and compassionating you, I lift your nothing, I strengthen it, that it may endure sustaining the All. Therefore do not be concerned about this, but rather think of letting the All operate in you. Then after this, I was doing my usual acts in the Supreme Volition, embracing everything and everyone, to be able to bring to my Creator the acts of all as one single act. Now while I was doing this, my sweet Jesus came out from within my interior, and embracing everything together with me, he united himself with me, doing what I was doing. Then, all love, he told me, "My daughter, I love so much the acts done in my will, that I myself take on the commitment to keep them in custody in the unity of my supreme light, in such a way as to render them inseparable from me and from my own acts. If you knew how jealous I am of these acts, how they glorify me in a holy divine way. It can be said that each of these acts is a new feast that starts in the whole creation and in the whole celestial fatherland. Flowing in my will, like ray of light, these acts bring new joys, feasts, and happinesses, wherever my will is. These acts are the joys, the feast, and the happiness that the creature forms in the will of her Creator. And do you think it is trivial that the creature can form and bring feast, joy, and happiness to her Creator, and wherever our will reigns? The same happened with my Queen Mamma. As she always operated in the unity of the light of the Supreme Will, all of her acts, her office of mother, her rights of queen, remained inseparable from her Creator. So much so, that when the divinity unleashes the acts of beatitude to make the whole celestial fatherland happy, it unleashes with them all the acts of the celestial Mamma. So all the saints feel invested, not only with our joys and beatitudes, but also with the maternal love of their mother, with the glory of their queen, and with all of her acts converted into joys for the whole celestial Jerusalem. Every fiber of her maternal heart loves all the children of the celestial fatherland with love of mother, and she shares her joys of mother and her glory of queen with everyone. So, on earth, she was mother of love and of sorrow for her children. who cost her so much as the life of her Son God. And by virtue of the unity of the light of the supreme will that she possessed, her acts remained inseparable from ours. While in heaven, she is mother of love, of joys, and of glory for all of her celestial children. So all the saints have greater love, more glory, and more joys, by virtue of their mother and sovereign queen. Therefore I love so much the one who lives in my will, that I lower myself to her, to do what she does together with her, to raise her up to the bosom of the Eternal One, to render her act one with her Creator. After this I remained thinking about the blessed will of God, and many things wandered through my mind that it is not necessary to put on paper. And my sweet Jesus, coming back, added, "My daughter, the triumph of my will is connected with creation and with redemption. It can be called one single triumph. Since a woman was the cause of the ruin of man, it was a virgin woman that, after 4,000 years, letting my humanity, united to the eternal Word, be born of her, provided the remedy for the ruin of fallen man. Now that the remedy for man is formed, is my will alone to be left without its full completion, while it has its prime act both in creation and in redemption? This is why, after 2,000 years more, we have chosen another virgin as the triumph and fulfillment of our will. Forming its kingdom in your soul and making itself known, with its knowledge, my will has given you its hand to raise you to living in the unity of its light, so that you may form your life in it, and the divine will may form its life in you. And having formed its dominion in you, it forms the connection through which to communicate its dominion to the other creatures. And just as, in descending into the womb of the Immaculate Virgin, the Word did not remain in it for her alone, but I formed the connection of communication for creatures, and I gave myself to all, and as a remedy for all, the same shall happen with you. By having formed its kingdom in you, my supreme volition forms the communications to make itself known to creatures. Everything I have told you about it, the knowledges I have given you, the way and the how of the living in my will, my making known to you how it wants, how it yearns for man to return into its arms and enter once again into his origin of the eternal will from which he came, are all ways of communication, bonds of love, transmission of light, a breeze to make them breathe the air of my will, and therefore disinfect the air of the human will, and a mighty wind to conquer and uproot the most rebellious wills. Each knowledge I have given you about my will contains a creative power, and everything is in letting these knowledges out, because the power they contain shall know how to breach its way into the hearts, to submit them to its dominion. Did the same perhaps not happen in redemption? As long as I remained with my mamma in the hidden life of Nazareth, everything was silent around me, although this hiddenness of mine, together with the Celestial Queen, served in an admirable way to form the substance of redemption, and so that I might announce myself as being already present in their midst. But when did its fruits communicate themselves in the midst of the peoples? When I went out in public, made myself known, and spoke to them with the power of my creative word. And as all that I did and said spread and keeps spreading still now in the midst of the peoples, then did the fruits of redemption have their effects, and still do. Indeed, my daughter, if no one had known that I had come upon earth, redemption would have been something dead and without effects for creatures. So knowledge gave life to its fruits. The same shall be for my will. Knowledge shall give life to the fruits of my will. This is why I wanted to renew what I did in redemption, choosing another virgin, remaining hidden with her for 40 years and more, segregating her from everyone as if in a new Nazareth, to be free with her, to tell the whole story, the prodigies, and the goods contained in it, so as to be able to form the life of my will in you. And just as I chose Saint Joseph to be together with me and my mamma, as our cooperator, tutor, and vigilant sentry for me and for the sovereign queen, in the same way I have placed near you the vigilant assistants of my ministers, as cooperators, tutors, and depositories of the knowledges, goods, and prodigies contained in my will. And since my will wants to establish its kingdom in the midst of peoples, through you I want to deposit this celestial doctrine in my ministers as my new apostles, so that first I may form with them the link of connection with my will, and then they may transmit it into the midst of peoples. If it were not so, or were not to be so, I would not have insisted so much on having you write, nor would I have permitted the daily coming of the priest, but I would have left all my work between me and you. Therefore be attentive, and leave me free to do what I want in you. Now who can say how confounded I remained at this speaking of Jesus? I remained mute, and from the depth of my heart I repeated, Fiat, Fiat, Fiat. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 19, Part 10. Fiat.